I thought this all started when Amber Heard wrote this long, was it an op-ed or an article or something in the Washington Post where she all but named, like called Johnny Depp by name. She just was basically alluded to a very abusive relationship and what did she say? Like, oh, it happened to be with an actor from a famous pirate movie, although I won't say what, you know.
It wasn't quite that detailed, but basically she said, 2 years ago, my name was like put out there. And it was, I was a survivor of domestic violence because of something that happened to me 2 years ago. There's a callback to 2016. In 2016 is when she filed for a domestic violence restraining order, and she filed for divorce from him, and it was all over the news.
Okay, so they were married. Okay. I was like, are
Hmm.
they just domestic partners? What's going on here?
I was confused at first too because he was with Vanessa Paradis for a long, long time. They have two children together, but they never got married. So I remember being confused at first too.
Mm.
And on top of that, Johnny and Amber were only married for like 15 months or something, like just over a year. Which is just wild, right? That you have like a marriage that lasted shorter than the amount of time that they've been suing each other at this point. Way shorter.
Oh man. Oh my god. That's like nothing. I mean, like now that I'm at a point where I've been in a relationship like 7.5 years, like to 15 months is like we were just still figuring out like how to make each other sandwiches. I don't know. I guess
Yeah,
we
I mean
grew.
they did date a bit longer than that. I think it was like 4 or 5 years or something before that because they met on the set of Rum Diary, which I think, if I remember correctly, was
Oh.
2010 or 2012. So they had been together for a few years before they got married. Was my understanding.
Oof. Okay. So I thought that this lawsuit was, well, this the trial was about Johnny Depp being like, "Hey, you basically like screwed my whole name up, and I haven't been able to get work."
Of several statements in the op-ed, and they list out the specifics. One of them is the title of the op-ed, which it looks like she didn't actually write the title, which is pretty common for a lot of these editorialized, kind of things. Even though it's an op-ed that is ostensibly written by her, but there's two other statements in the op-ed that they have at issue. One of them is like there's one in particular that is the strongest, I think. But basically, they've got to show, like, I'll just kind of generally talk about the elements of defamation. They've got to show that she lied about him to a third party, the whole world. And that that he suffered reputational harm from that, and that harm was caused by the op-ed and not by something else. And on top of that, because he's a public figure, he has to show that the the lie that Amber told, that she lied not just negligently but with actual malice, which is kind of a confusing term because people think that it's like, being malicious. It's not exactly that. Actual malice means that somebody lied either knowing that what they were saying was false, or lying in reckless disregard of the truth or the falsity of the statement. So, but somebody who's going out and saying, I was domestically abused by my partner, is one of those that she would probably know whether or not she was. That in this particular case does get a little bit more nuanced because we're kind of grappling with the definition of domestic violence. Is it just physical, or is it also emotional and verbal? And if so, where is that line? It's not a domestic violence case. Like the we're not looking at the elements of a domestic violence kind of claim against Johnny Depp or against Amber Heard. So it's kind of like a soft sort of case that you have to look at this underneath the defamation claim, is like whether or not domestic violence happened. So it can get a little bit confusing as to like what's going to happen here because of that definition.
What is the absolute worst that could happen to Johnny, and what is the absolute worst that could happen to Amber?
The worst that could happen to Johnny, you mean in terms of like evidence that comes out, or like the result of the case?
I guess both. I mean, his
So
career's already shot, it seems, but
his
I don't
his
know. He's
his
just so charming. I'm concerned.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, his career has definitely been shot because of it. The worst thing that can come is, I mean, so bringing the case, bringing the case, he probably has two tiered goals. Really, you've got the number one goal that is, well, and I'm not sure which one is more important to him. I would suspect it's actually the court of public opinion, because we talk about this a lot on my channel, especially when it comes to these celebrity lawsuits. There's the court of public opinion and there's the court of law. And sometimes those merge, and sometimes those two can create competing interests for somebody that's involved in one of these lawsuits, right? So when you have certain messaging or certain filings, sometimes you can read through a complaint that's filed, and it'll kind of feel a little bit more like a PR statement than an actual lawsuit, and then you realize, oh, this is actually a little bit more of a statement to the press, to the public. There's a lot of that in the Alec Baldwin Rust shooting, for example. I've talked about that one quite a bit as well.
Oh my gosh, yes, because and just what we've learned from the last few years, like media can shape public perception of an event, and it
Completely.
could be completely false, and it doesn't matter. It's almost like once a certain amount of time has gone by and a certain narrative has been pushed, like you could be served up the truth, and a fair amount of people will be like, no, I think I understand what happened.
Yeah, I mean, we saw that with the Rittenhouse case. We're seeing this right now with the Johnny Depp case too, because so that's why, like, that's one of his big goals right now, is to get his message out to the public, because the media has been very, very strong in basically trying to drag him through the mud and portraying Amber as a victim or a survivor of domestic violence for one reason or another. You can have all kinds of different reasonings that you believe, if you want to be more jaded or less jaded, there's all kinds of reasons why you could think of that. But his main goal is probably the court of public opinion, getting his story out there, getting his message out there, and having people believe him and understand him. And then the second one is actually winning the lawsuit. So at this point, he has already taken the stand. He spent 3 or 4 days in direct examination, cross-examination, and then redirect. And I thought he did a phenomenal job. I really think that he did a great job of getting his story out there. And he proved to be a very credible, believable witness. And all of that being bolstered so far by the evidence that has come out from his side, from his case in chief, has been very supportive. Now we're at the halfway point. We're still going to have to hear from Amber Heard's side, and that may, bring down that analysis a little bit. That maybe it kind of evens things up a bit more between him and her. But we'll evaluate that as that evidence comes out. So
okay, and what is I guess the sort of worst case scenario for Amber?
I mean, right now, it's my opinion that this trial is so far going in favor of Johnny. So worst case scenario for Amber is she is found out to be an unstable, abusive person who not only emotionally but also physically abuses her partners, and also has been propped up and become a charlatan for the Me Too movement and for the ACLU, all for her personal gain, and then loses everything. That's kind of a bad worst case scenario for her.
And it's so good that people like you are covering this, because it's so many hours. The average person doesn't have the bandwidth to watch and understand. And even if you were able to watch the whole thing, you're like, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
This side seems mean.
Yeah. I mean, and especially I can understand people that aren't familiar with the judicial process, or even we've gotten a lot of messages from people who are lawyers, but they're from, Brazil or the Netherlands or other places that are very interested in this case. And they're like, I don't quite understand the jury system because we don't have that where we are, how does this even work? So it's been a really fun time getting to sort of share what we know, because it's not just me. I have a bunch of awesome lawyers that are joining me on this panel, and other people too from other areas of expertise. Like we've got Nurse Liz talking about a lot of the medical stuff. That's been really helpful. We've also got Spidey from the behavioral arts, who's a behavioral analyst, just to talk about body language and different things that you can read. It's really, really fun, especially because it's one of the things that really intrigues me the most about this stuff is that the attorneys and the parties, they can't really communicate directly with the jury except for a few small opportunities. the parties, they can, when they take the witness stand, they're able to talk to the jury, tell them their case. But other than that, they're just sitting there silently, trying not to look like they have too bad of an RBF, and trying not
What's
to
an
turn them off.
RBF? Is that like an
Resting bitch,
RBI?
resting bitch face.
Oh, resting bitch face. Of course.
Yeah. So
well, Amber, I feel like has failed miserably at that already.
She has made quite a few faces that have been very interesting. And it's like, on the one hand, we're all watching and analyzing and all that stuff. And a lot of it can look quite fake and quite, put on. They are both actors, by the way, of course, as we all know very well. So there's also, that possibility, but, sitting for 10 or 12 hours a day, it's hard to keep putting on faces or putting on demeanors for that long. I don't know if either of them consider themselves method actors, but that's hard, right? But I also try to keep in mind that this is also a particularly stressful situation for both of them. They both are fully aware that they're under a microscope, in front of cameras and all kinds of people around the world. So things can look a little bit different. People also react to stress differently sometimes. So I try to keep that in mind, but it's really hard. It's really hard not to look at the faces that she's making and say, like, I'm seeing some things here that are a little off.
How important is a first impression to a jury? Or do you think that obviously it's comprised of just like regular people, not like necessarily law people, but at what point do you feel like a jury typically makes up their mind?
We were actually talking about this this morning on my channel. Peter from Lawyer, he said that he had come across some studies that apparently an almost alarming number of people make actually a very early determination as to who they want to side with in a particular case. I think he said specifically, even or especially in civil cases, he said sometimes as early as the opening statements, which is kind of terrifying because, in any kind of a trial, you start with the opening statements where you get the lawyers getting up there and saying, this is what the evidence will show. They're making all these promises about what they're going to see throughout this trial. They're going to give them a roadmap, a basic framework so that they can understand and filter through all of this evidence and put it in the proper compartments in their brain. But there's no evidence in the opening statement. Like, they're just giving them promises. So the fact that a large number of jurors will actually make a conclusion from the opening statement is a little bit scary because there's no evidence involved there. It's just, like I said, it's just promises.
It's like a first date when they say, like, a woman decides in the first 30 seconds if she's going to sleep with the guy or not. It's basically the same applies to a trial.
Yeah.
Women are sitting there, yep, I would sleep with Johnny Depp. Yep,
yeah.
Me up. Yeah.
But at the same time, though, I can also see, those situations where you go on a date with a guy, you don't really know him, but you know that he's very attractive. And then as soon as he opens his mouth, you're like, oh, no.
Like, oh, that's too bad. Yeah.
So there's always that possibility. So you can also have a slow decline for some people too. But it's a first impression, I think, is very important. And but also jurors have a lot of time to sit and watch, and they can start to detect when things sort of change in a person. So having consistency is always generally a good thing for both parties.
How do you think the jury feels right now? Overall thoughts, not lawyer thoughts, personal. It's very subjective thoughts.
It's hard to tell because the jury. So we've talked to some people that are in the courtroom, and they said that the jury probably had some instructions to not show how they were thinking or feeling about things because they've been pretty much stone-faced the entire time. You can kind of tell when they're paying attention or not paying attention. And that's maybe a little bit of a bellwether, is when they see something that is a bit more important or less important. Because something that I like to say is that, it's like a tree falling in the woods. If there's no one there to hear it, it doesn't make a sound. If evidence comes out of trial and the jury's not paying attention, does it really get introduced? Is it really there for the jury? So that's a big deal. But I think that, basically, I think that looking at this from a human perspective, people have very good senses of things like justice, things like self-defense, And this is kind of one of those situations that I think that when we get to the end of this trial, we will probably see one party in particular that has been severely wronged by the other one. And juries don't like to walk away without giving some kind of amelioration to that kind of a situation, even if technically the law may not be very strong on that, but they want to do that. So I have a feeling we still haven't seen Amber Heard's evidence come in yet. She still has to put on her case in chief. We're only halfway there. But so far, there's been a lot that's been good that has been shown from Johnny's side. And I think that I have a feeling that this jury is going to be very sympathetic to his side.